Good evening, everybody. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening. So, yeah, maybe we'll just start with today's class. It's already 7. So, are the slides visible? Can you see it properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, I am seeing all the known names only and the faces. So maybe just I'll just go through it. So yet again, this is our problem solving session, and I am Sharmishta Majumdar, your PMRF TA for the course Maternal Infant Young Child Nutrition. And as you all know, this course is taken by Dr. Rupal Dalal from IIT Bombay, right? So today we'll be yeah. So, from the start of all our lectures, we have been learning about what kind of nutrition is beneficial for pregnant ladies, for lactating mothers, for children, and what are these kinds of functional nutrients and bodybuilding nutrients which help in the growth and development of babies, right? So, after knowing all these kinds of advantages of nutrients and also what are the helpful feeding techniques, how the feeding should be initiated from the first day, and how the feeding pattern should be continued in a baby. So we have been learning about all these things one by one. Now, what we are going to discuss today, it is about the metrics of uh, you know uh, understanding that how much the child has been able to grow. So we'll be basically discussing the growth and development parameters, the different kinds of metrics or the parameters that are taken into account to see whether the child has been able to get the optimal growth and development or not, right? So you must have already gone through the lectures of week 11. So yeah. So there we have come to know about the WHO, World Health Organization, multi-center growth reference study. So we'll be discussing in detail regarding this study and why it is so important. Then we'll be also discussing questions related to the percentile and the Z scores, and what are these metrics related to how the growth and development is measured in case of children. Then also we'll be talking about the different anthropometric measurements and all these parameters, right? So we'll directly move on to our first question. So when was the WHO MGRS or multi-center growth reference study undertaken? Anybody with the answer?
It's C between 1997 and 2003.
Correct. So this MGRS or the multi-center growth reference study, it is a one-of-a-kind study where the different growth and development parameters were taken into account, and it was seen not only in one specific demography, but it was undertaken in a global level so as to see the different ways related to the growth of the children. So, as you have very correctly said, that it was undertaken in the year 1997 and to 2003. So, yes, as we just yeah. So as we just discussed, this was undertaken in 1997 and 2003. So what is this? What is this reference study? So as the name says, it is a growth reference study, and based on the findings of this study, till now we are able to say, okay, whether the child is growing properly or whether the child is having a proper development or not, right? So these are the standards. So the different cases were taken into consideration in this study, and from a lot of data which had been accumulated, a standard was set, right? So this standard, it helps us to assess the growth and development of infants and young children, not only at a specific country, in a specific country, or not only in a specific site, but it is a global parameter. It is a parameter which is being used globally for assessing the growth and development in children, right? So as you can see, the standards, I'll just, yeah. So as you can see that this reference study, as I have just said, it is a one of a kind of a reference study, and it was, so it was done with a lot of sample size, and this can assess the children everywhere. As we were just discussing, it is a tool to assess, yeah. So it is a tool to assess the growth and development of children all over the world. So it is irrespective of the ethnicity, no matter what race they belong to, no matter what socio-economic status they belong to, or no matter what kind of feeding they are getting, right? But there are some parameters which were considered during this study, and those are all specific parameters that has been taken as some inclusion criteria. Like whenever we do some study, we take some parameters as inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria, like the subjects that you will be choosing. So there has to be some parameters that they have to qualify or they have to satisfy. So we'll be talking about those criteria in our subsequent questions. So as we were also discussing that it is a global reference that was set. So this was done, please remember, this study was done in a span of 6 countries, namely Brazil, Ghana, India, Norway, Oman and USA. So all these regions, these 6 names are very important, so that you keep in mind that the subjects who were considered for this study of the multi-center growth reference study, they were specifically taken from these areas, right? So yes, please remember, from 1997 to 2003, this WHO mediated MGRS study or the multi-center growth reference study was conducted, right? Okay. So we'll move on to our next question. Which of these is not an inclusion criterion for MGRS? So we were just talking about the inclusion and the exclusion criteria, right? So what are the parameters that are taken or what are the parameters that are considered for a subject to be treated as, suitable for the study? So these are the inclusion criteria. So what do you think would be the answer? Anybody with the answer?
C.
Okay.
Point number C.
Okay. So I'm getting a lot of mixed answers.
Point number D.
Okay. Okay. So let us discuss. Let us go through our options. So what does the question say? Which of these is not an inclusion criteria for MGRS? So let us just discuss once again so that there is no confusion regarding what is an inclusion criteria, right? So whenever we are, whenever we are considering subjects for any study, I'm assuming somebody is unmute. Yeah, thank you. So whenever we are selecting subjects for the study, so we take into consideration some parameters which make them suitable for the study, right? So in this multi-center growth reference study, all the subjects which were taken, since it's a reference study, right? It is a standard. The standard against which we now take into consideration the values to see whether the child is growing properly or not. So this is a reference, and any reference has to be calculated, or any reference has to be decided on an ideal platform. So all the subjects that were selected for this study, they have to have all the ideal characteristics, right? So let us see the options. No known health or environmental constraints to growth. So of course, if somebody doesn't have any health constraints or any environmental constraints, then it is definitely a beneficial thing, right? It is definitely advantageous that there is no health risk or there is no environmental constraint which would jeopardize the growth of the baby. So our option number A is a ideal situation. Okay, let's go to number B. No maternal smoking before and after delivery. So we know that smoking is definitely a disadvantage for a child. So if the mother has a habit of smoking, then definitely there will be a lot of disadvantages for the child, and the growth will not be happening properly. So if there is no maternal smoking before and after delivery, definitely that is also good for the child's growth and development. So this is also a beneficial situation. Let us go to option C. Mothers who followed MGRS feeding recommendations, right? So as we were discussing about the multicenter growth reference study, so WHO, they had advocated some of these feeding recommendations. So these feeding recommendations, they were advocated from the World Health Organization, and they were taken into account as the ideal feeding practices. So if a child is getting those ideal feeding practices, then of course the growth and development will also not be hampered, right? Now let us come to option D. Option D says early term birth and presence of significant morbidity. So any kind of morbidity is not at all expected in case of a child, right? So morbidity and early term birth. So if a child is born before the specific time, or if the child is not full term, right? So the child is premature. And number two, there is presence of significant morbidity. So the option D in this case, it is something which is not at all desired for a child. So if we are considering the ideal parameters for the child growth, then definitely we wouldn't consider any child who is an early term birth or had significant morbidity. So the question says which is not an inclusion criterion. So the answer is option D. I hope I have been able to clear the doubts for all of you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. So because many of you have given varied answers for this question, so please go through the question properly, and it asks which is not an inclusion criteria. So definitely in case of MGRS, all the ideal parameters are taken into consideration, right? So as we just discussed, only you must have gone through the recordings also where they have talked about that the child is a full-term born child with no morbidity, and the sanitation availability is good, the feeding practices are optimal, and they are healthy, they are from a healthy population, and there is no environmental variation. So all these subjects, they were considered for the calculation of the reference. So the answer to this question is option D. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we'll move on to our next question. What was the study design for the MGRS? So we have discussed that the MGRS, it had taken a lot of data into account as to what are the parameters on which the growth and development of the child would be assessed. Okay, so I have got some answers. So MGRS, yes, please go ahead.
The longitudinal study.
Okay, so let us discuss. So the MGRS study, it involved both the cross-sectional study and longitudinal study. So the answer for this question is C, which is both of the above, right? So before moving on to the answer, I would like to ask you people, can anybody tell me what is the difference between a longitudinal study and a cross-sectional study? Anybody would like to volunteer?
So longitudinal, can I answer?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So longitudinal study was something which is done for a long time, and cross-sectional study was done at that time itself, considering for the children growth, children of age 18 months to 17 months.
Right.
So it was at that point of time only, and longitudinal, it's a long-term study, and cross-sectional was at that point of time.
Right. So
Thank you.
yeah. So when we are considering longitudinal study, say for suppose we have one subject. So whichever subject we are considering, we have one subject, and this subject is being tested every time. So this subject is investigated after a specific time in a longitudinal study. Say if I am investigating something in person X, so I will be investigating him or her, say at 7 days, at 14 days, at 21 days, at 30 days. So when all these changes are investigated in a single person, so this is called as longitudinal study. So this is over a span of time, right? So this is a longitudinal study. And a cross-sectional study means that in a specific group of subjects, we are taking into consideration the investigation only at a time, like at a specific time. So if I measure one parameter in a group of subjects on the 18th day, okay, so say for suppose I take the measurements only on a specific day, so that is called a cross-sectional study. So that is time specific. So longitudinal study is at a longer span of time, and cross-sectional study is at a specific time. So in case of this MGRS study also, both kind of studies were taken into account. So as you can see, in case of MGRS study, so the longitudinal study was done in children from a time span of birth to 24 months, right? So from the time of their birth to 2 years of age, this longitudinal study was done. That means some of the measurements were repeatedly taken after specific time intervals in specific subjects. Number 2, cross-sectional study. So cross-sectional study was specifically done in a group of subjects aged between 18 to 71 months of age. So in this group, that is 18 to 71 months of age, some measurements were done only at a specific point of time. So this is called a cross-sectional study. And let us also see what kind of a longitudinal study was done. So in the MGRS longitudinal study, the mothers and the newborns, they were screened and they were investigated at specific time intervals, as we have just discussed. So they were investigated, or the parameters were measured at birth, and then every week, say at week 1, week 2, week 4, week 6. So before in this time, they were visited at least 21 times. So this was the frequency as to which the measurements were taken. Then from the 2 to 12 months of age, they were taken in a monthly fashion. Then from 12 months to 24 months, that is 2 years of age, these measurements or the data was taken every 2 months. So from birth to 6 months of age, it was taken for 21 times continuously in a span of birth to 6 months of age. Then from 6 months to 12 months, it was monthly. And then from 12 months to 24 months, it was every 2 months, right? So since the data or the measurements were taken at every time interval, so hence this is called a longitudinal study, right? So for the references that were considered in this multi-center growth reference study, both kind of cross-sectional and longitudinal study were executed. Okay. I hope I am clear about this question. Anybody has any queries? Okay. So we'll move on to our next question. What was the total sample size for MGRS? What do you think? How many subjects could have been screened for getting this reference scale? Okay. Anybody else with the answer? Correct. So as most of you have said, the answer is option A. So we have discussed that this study, it was distributed within 6 countries. So India, Oman, Norway, Ghana, Brazil, and in US, right? So this was in a broader span of 6 places or sites from where the subjects were taken. And from these places, a total of 8,440 children were screened and they were measured for these parameters, right? So here again, let us think about the point that we just discussed, the question before, inclusion criteria, right? So it might happen like all the children that we take into consideration as subjects, they might not be entirely ideal subjects. So that also happened in this case. So as you can see in the longitudinal study, 1,743 children, they were enrolled in for giving the longitudinal samples. But when they kept on taking the measurements and when the parameters were investigated, 6 children out of 1,743, they were excluded because they had morbidities. So a lot of them had different kinds of diseases. They had protein malnutrition. So hence, since these kind of since these kind of parameters, they do not make them ideal for the consideration. So hence, these subjects were excluded, right? So these are the exclusion criteria, like any children having any disease, say for suppose some kind of protein malnutrition or calorie malnutrition, or any child who is underweight, any child who has stunting or wasting. So these are all the exclusion criteria. So as we were talking about inclusion criteria, where all the ideal situation is taken into consideration, but any child who has presented with the exclusion criteria, obviously they are not they are deemed unfit for consideration as subjects for this study. So in the longitudinal sample, 6 of them out of 1,743, they were excluded. And for the cross-sectional sample, there were around 6,697 children. But out of them, again, for these kinds of conditions which affect the growth and development, 28 children, they were excluded. So in a total 8,440 children, they were the ideal subjects who were considered for the entire survey. So their measurements were taken in the ideal scenario, and these are the values on which the reference scale was prepared, right? So the correct answer is option A. We'll move on to our next question. Which of these observations by sex and anthropometric indicators have been used in the construction of the WHO Child Growth Standards? What do you think is the answer? So now we talked about the different references, right? Now what are these indicators on which we will measure the growth and development of the child? Okay. What about other people? Okay. Yeah, somebody has raised a hand. Okay. So let us go through the options. So here they are asking about which one of the indicators they are used for the construction of the WHO Child Growth Standards. So which of these is a standard basically, right? So let us see the options. Weight for length or height. So weight for height. Number 2 is age for weight. Number 3 is age for height and age for BMI, right? So it is a very simple MCQ with just an exclusion. All these age for weight, age for length and age for BMI, it doesn't make sense because age is the constant one, right? And on basis of age, these parameters are decided. Yes, so the answer is weight for length or height. So whenever we are considering the growth and development of a child, there are three things that we majorly see. So number 1 is weight according to height. Number 2 is weight according to age. Number 2 is height according to age, and number 3 is weight according to the height. So these three are the important indicators based on which we are deciding as to whether the child is growing properly or not, right? So here, if you remember, we had talked about all these terms in our first two sessions. So these are very important conceptual terms. Please remember what is wasting, what is stunting, and what are the differences between all these terminologies, right? So if we look at the image, you can see this is a normal child who has been shown to have normal height according to age. Okay, so whatever is designated for that specific age, the child has got that height. Now, if we come to this child, so this child seems to be very thin. Though this child has been able to reach the same height, but the child seems to have very less weight. So whenever we are considering weight for height, and if there is reduced weight for a specific height, this is called as wasting, right? Now we come to this child. So this child, for his age, he is supposed to have a height of this level. But then again we see that the child's height is at this level. So this child is shorter as with reference to his age, right? So the child having reduced height for age is called stunting. Now let us come to this child. So the third child, we can see the child is thin, and again the child is also shorter than the normal or the standard height. So here the child is low weight, has got reduced weight for his or her age. So this child is definitely underweight. Now let us come to the other side of the spectrum. So here we were talking about all the things that were reduced. What about if it is on the higher side of the spectrum? So here we can see that the child is overweight. So the child has gained more weight as to the reference weight that he or she should have based on his or her age. And in these kind of overweight or obese children, there is high weight for height. So here we were talking about low weight for height in case of wasting, and in obesity we have high weight for height. Yeah, and of course, as we know, BMI will be higher in these obese children. Yeah. So BMI will also be higher in this obese children for their age. So BMI is body mass index, and here we are considering the weight of the child and the height. So these are the two metrics which when considered in a specific mathematical calculation, it gives us the BMI. So definitely if the child is on the higher side of the spectrum and is overweight, so the BMI will also increase, right? And there is another special situation which is being called as double burden, where there is stunting. So stunting is what? Stunting is reduced height for age. So here the child is stunted and again overweight. So both the sides, both the ways the child is deficient. So there is low height for age and deficient as in he is not getting the proper nutrition, which has led him to gain more of weight, right? So please remember all these parameters, and as we have just discussed, like the first, weight for length and height. So weight for length and height, whenever it is reduced weight on basis of the height, so we call it wasting, right? Second is weight for age. If the weight reduces, we call it underweight. Weight for age. Then again, third is we have length or height for age. So that is called stunting. So the child is shorter than what he is supposed to be at that specific age. And fourth metric is BMI or body mass index. Yeah. So body mass index. Yes, somebody has raised a hand. Go ahead.
No, you finish this. After this, I'll ask my doubt.
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt in the middle.
Okay, sure. So yeah, so we were talking about the body mass index, and as we have just discussed, in case of a body mass index also has a specific range, a value range, right? So if somebody is lesser than that BMI range, so of course that person or that child would be designated as an underweight, and higher than the BMI would be designated as overweight. So please, considering the children nutrition, it is very important to keep these three parameters in mind: the stunting, which happens due to reduced height, wasting, reduced weight based on height, and also the underweight scenario. So please be very thorough and very clear about these conceptual terms. Okay? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, the thing is, this is something little personal question I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Like, what if the child is, taller and heavier than the age, but to that height, probably he or she doesn't look bulky or anything.
Okay. So here again, if the child is taller than the reference height, so there might be a lot of, hormonal considerations in that also, because there might be, as we mostly discuss about deficiencies, right? The hyposecretion, but there might be more secretion of some hormones which might lead to more growth. So if there is more secretion of growth hormone, or there can be more taller children, the children can grow more taller. So if there is some child who is growing way above than the reference height, so these things need to be figured out. Like these things need to be...
Is that a problem actually?
For some it is not a problem, but for some it might be a problem, so it needs to be investigated. Like these are the reference values, but if somebody is having something which is very high or something which is very low, so definitely clinically, as well as you need to go to a medical practitioner, and also clinically it needs to be excluded so that it doesn't go unnoticed.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, sure. Go
See,
ahead.
tall and obese children, that is because of the lifestyle. Short and obese is always hormonal problem. That is the way we evaluate for the growth and development in the adolescents. So tall, obese, the bone age will be mildly advanced. So that is the one criteria. Very rarely growth hormone, acromegaly and these things. They are tall or hereditary tall. So tall and obese is considered as an exogenous obesity.
Right.
And other is pathological. So we need not to worry if tall and obese are there. They usually overgrow that problem because of the lifestyle.
Yeah. So
Actually, the family, men in the family are also quite taller.
That is the way.
Yeah. So
That
if
is the
okay.
men are
Thank you,
also
thank you
taller
so
in
much.
the family, then of course it might be a hereditary trait in your family as well. So these are different
Okay.
factors which needs to be taken into consideration. It can be a hereditary trait, as you have just mentioned. It can be because of the lifestyle, because nowadays children, they are mostly sedentary. They just come back from school and then they are sitting and they gorge on a lot of junk food. So this can be because of the lifestyle, and also again the other factors which needs to be excluded. So it is a multifactorial phenomenon. Yeah. So we'll move on to our next question. Yeah. So identify the WHO growth chart. So we have a growth chart here. What do you think the answer would be? Okay. Yeah, so these I would encourage all of you to answer.
It's A, weight for length, girls.
Okay. Please look at the growth chart very carefully.
B.
Yeah. So let us discuss. So whenever we get to see a growth chart, we know we have this color categorization, right? So pink is for girls and blue is for boys, right? So definitely this growth chart, it belongs to a female child, right? Number two, whenever we are checking the growth charts, we will check the x-axis and the y-axis, right? So the horizontal axis is the x-axis and the vertical axis is the y-axis. So here as we are seeing the horizontal axis, it is written age. So from birth to 2 years. So this growth chart, it will belong to a girl child from the time period of birth to 2 years, right? Now what are we seeing in this growth chart? So this will come in the y-axis, which is, as you can see, it is written weight, right? So the answer to this question is, as we can see, age, weight, right? So this is the, what you are seeing in the y-axis is the weight. So based on the age of the child, that is from birth to 2 years of age, you are checking the reference weight of a girl child. So the answer would be weight for, yes, correct. So weight for age in case of female children. So you can make it out just by seeing the graph or just by seeing the growth chart as to what we are expecting. So we have the age parameter here, we have the weight parameter here, and the color, it tells us that it is for a girl child, right? So answer is option B. Now I'll move on to my next question. Let us see. You learn that an infant's length is less than the third percentile of age. Which of the following tools will provide the best information about the child's nutritional status? What do you think would be the answer? They are saying that at a specific age, the child's height is lesser than the third percentile. So here the concept of percentile is, third percentile means only 3% of kids, they have a height lesser than this, and rest of 97 percentile or 97%, they have more than this. So this means that the child who's in question here, he or she is very much short, right? So here the height is less than the third percentile of age. So along with this height for age, what do you think would be a proper tool or the ideal tool which will tell about the child's nutritional status? Okay, so we have got various answers. Okay. So let me just, before moving on to the answer, somebody has written age for length percentile. So age for length percentile, it is a wrong terminology. As we have discussed, age is specific, right? Age is constant. So based on age, it will be either height or it will be weight, or it will be the weight for height, right? So here we had discussed these parameters. So here we have the length for age. So the correct answer in this is weight for length percentile. So if you remember, we had discussed about stunting and wasting and how they can mask, the condition can be masked before, right? So here the height is less. So height is less for age, right? So that means there is stunting. So as we have just discussed, if a person based on his or her age, if a child has reduced height on basis of age, it is stunting. And again, if we consider the weight for height or the weight for length percentile, so this is again wasting. That is based on their weight, based on their height, what is their weight. So many a times what happens, the stunting, it masks the effects of wasting, right? So it is important to check for both these parameters as to check for both whether stunting and wasting is present in that child or not, right? So is there any query or any confusion related to this question? I'm asking because a lot of people have given various answers. I hope this question is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, this is clear now.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next question. Measurements should be made with the same method that was used when the growth charts were developed. Thus, a 3-year-old child should be weighed. What do you think is the answer? So whenever we are weighing a child, what should be the ideal situation in which the child should be weighed?
Option B.
Right. So option B. So whenever we are measuring the weight of the child, so the child should not be wearing a lot of garments, and he or she should not be bombarded with a lot of outer garments, and the shoes should also be removed. So as we can see that a clean cloth or pad is often kept at the baby tray, and the baby is placed on top of this clean cloth. And it is also very important that whoever is measuring the weight, it is very important for them to calibrate the machine after placing the clean cloth as well, so as to get the accurate results. So also please remember that this clean dry towel placed on the baby, it also reduces the chances of infection, because obviously this tray is being used for multiple babies, and there might be chances of infection from this place. And also, since there might be chances of a drop in their body temperature, so this towel is also maintaining that, right? So yes, all the outer clothing and the shoes and all the extra garments that are there on the body of the child, it needs to be removed so that the proper weight of the child could be measured. Okay. So mention the missing percentiles in the given chart. So as you can see, this is a blue colored chart. So of course it is for the boys, right? Here in x-axis we can see age from 0 to 6, that is from birth to 6 months, right? And in y-axis we can see weight. So this is basically the weight for age growth chart for boys from birth to 6 months of age, right? And as we have seen that they have some percentiles here, so we can just see a 97th percentile. So what do you think would be the answer in this case? Which are the missing percentiles? So here, as we can see all these lines, they specifically stand for each percentile. So all these percentiles are also levels which denote as to how many children they lie above that group and how many lie below that level. So what do you think is the answer? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So yes, the answer is option C. So as we can see that the lowest percentile in any growth chart, so in any growth chart, the lowest percentile is the third percentile, right? So the third percentile means if any child is having, say for suppose we are considering this growth chart only, so weight. If somebody has a weight falling on the third percentile, that means that 3% of total kids, they have a weight lesser than this child, and 97 they are above this child. So this is definitely not a desirable situation. Then we have a 15th percentile. Then we have a 50th percentile. So this 50th percentile is definitely an average. Okay. So this, I will come back to these questions, okay? I'll come back to these questions. So 50th percentile, this is the average, right? So any value which is lying on this 50th percentile, it is the average value for that specific age, right? So say for suppose if we are considering, excuse me, the weight of a 6 week old boy, and we have seen that the weight is this. So based on that, we can figure out the percentile. So if it falls on the 50th percentile trace, then definitely it is the average value. Then again 85th. So 85th is a beneficial percentile where 85% that child is having weight more than 85% of all the children, and it is only 15% who have greater weight than that child. And again 97%. So 97th percentile is definitely the most advantageous, where it shows that it is just 3% who have lesser weight than this child, and most 97% children, they have a weight of this trace or more than this, right? So these are the percentiles which you need to remember. So the third percentile is the lowest, the 15th, the 50th, which is the average, the 85th percentile, and the 97th percentile, right? So the answer for this question is option C, 3rd, 15th, 50th, and 85th. Okay. So next question is, what is the point R on the given chart called? So we have a point R on this chart. Okay. Yeah. So the answer is plotted point. So the I have deliberately put all these charts so that I can, acclimatize most of you to just looking at the charts and figuring out what the chart stands for. So here again, as we can see that it is a chart blue in color, so definitely it is for the boys. We have the age in the x-axis, which is written from birth. As you can see, it is written from birth to 5 years of age. So this is a growth chart for seeing the growth and development in boys of age taken from birth to 5 years. And here they have the weight in kilograms. And here you can see, if we consider say 5 months of age. So from 5 months of age, we have a weight, and from this it is a 13 kg. So this comes to an intersection point. So this intersection point between the x-axis and the y-axis is called plotted point, right? So the answer is option B, plotted point, right? Let us come to the next question. What is the average weight of a 6-month-old girl in kilograms? So here again, as you can see, it is a pink colored growth chart. So that means it is for a girl, right? X-axis we have age, y-axis we have weight, and x-axis in age we have from 6 to 2 years, right? So that is from 6 months of age to 2 years of age. And again the percentile. So in percentile we have 50th, which stands for the average. So as most of you have said option A, so let us see how we are going to decide it is option A. So it is 6-month-old girl, right? So if it is 6th month, so as we can see, this is the 6th month, and this point it gives us the average weight at 50th percentile. So as we can see, this is the 7 mark, right? And all these gradations, they are for 200. These are for 200. So as we can see, 200 grams. So as we can see, from 7 they have gone from 1 and 2. So here the average weight is option A, that is 7.3. So that is, tell the answer of question 10. Yeah. Question 10 is plotted point, option B. Is it fine? Option C, you can see the percentiles, right? Okay, so we'll move on to so as we were just discussing, sure. So as we were discussing, we can see 6 months and here 50th percentile. So this is from 6 months, weight for age of girls, it is around 7.3 kgs. So the answer is option A, right? Okay. So now we have, what is the average length of a 2-year-old boy in centimeters? So again, let us see. It is a blue colored growth chart. So definitely it is for a boy. Now we have in the x-axis, it is from x-axis, it is from birth to 2 years, right? So that is from birth to 2 years and it is a percentile. And y-axis we have length in centimeter. So length means height. So this is a height for age growth chart, right? And here we are checking the average length. So as I have just discussed, average length means the 50th percentile. That is half and half people, they fall on it, right? So here as we can see, if we see the 50th percentile, so what we discussed, 2 years, right? So 2 years bar is this. Let us go above 50th percentile. So if you see, if you corroborate with the y-axis, you have 85 here, and each value it stands for 1. Each box it stands for, or each bar it stands for 1 centimeter. So as you can see, 85, 86, 87, 88, right? So the answer, as you have rightly said, it is 88 centimeter, right? Yeah. So most of you have been able to give the correct answers. So that is fine. So please go through the growth charts carefully, and that is how you can calculate the specific percentile values and also the average values. So we'll move on to the next question. A girl child whose weight was 3.8 kgs at birth suddenly starts dropping to the 15th percentile line at 1 month of age. What could be done to increase her weight? Yeah. So definitely the answer is very simple. Yeah. So option C. As we can see that the child we are talking about is of 1 month. So definitely complementary feeding is out of the question, right? So option D is excluded. We will never start formula or we will never start animal milk because we are advocating the breastfeeding practices, right? So of course formula or animal milk substitution is not a solution. So teach effective breastfeeding technique. So option C is the correct answer. Now let us go through the growth chart. So here again, weight for age girls and from birth to 2 years of age, right? Excuse me. So we were talking that the girl child at birth was 3.8, right? So if we check here at birth, it is just a hypothetical question. So it is not a clinical question. It's a hypothetical question. Is it okay, or you have something to say?
ಹಲೋ
Yes, yes.
ಟೋಬ್ರಾಮೈಸಿನ್ ಐ ಡ್ರಾಪ್ ಕೊಡಿ ನನಗೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಓಟೆಕ್ AC ಇಯರ್ ಡ್ರಾಪ್ ಕೊಡಿ.
Okay. So yes. So as we can see that at birth, the child, according to the question, has got is of 3.8 kgs, right? So here at birth, if we consider 3.8, so here if we see 1, 2, 3, 4. So almost it is at the 97th percentile. So the baby has been born with a very good weight and has the 97th percentile based on the weight to age, right? Now according to the question, what they are saying that at 1 month age, so 1 month age, what happens? As you see, the weight starts dropping to the 15th percentile. So the 15th percentile is this trace, and if you consider the 1 month, so as you can see it is this point, right? So this is around 3.6 kgs. So from 4.8 kgs, which would have been the ideal weight of the child at 1 month, the child is actually at 3.6 kgs. So the child is around 1.2 kgs lesser than what was expected based on her weight at birth, right? So definitely the effective breastfeeding techniques can be employed to improve the whole situation, right? So the answer is teach effective breastfeeding techniques. Okay. So we'll move on to the next question. Growth chart shows a sharp decline after 6 months of age. What could be a possible reason?
Option A.
Okay. What about others? Yeah. So as most of you have said the correct answer, it is option A. So one milestone feeding practice that we have discussed over and over again at the completion of 6 months of age is complementary feeding, right? So here it says that there was a proper growth which was seen as per the growth chart in case of a baby, but there has been a sharp decline exactly after 6 months of age. So we know that it is a milestone phenomena that happens exactly after the completion of 6 months of age, and if it is not initiated properly, then definitely the growth and development of the baby will be hampered, right? So if we just go through the options, mother is underweight, obviously that doesn't impact it. Baby is breastfeeding frequently. If baby is breastfeeding, it is definitely advantageous for the baby. Baby is moving too much, also it is not a possible reason for the decline in growth. So definitely at 6 months of age, if the baby is not being given the additional nutritional requirement that the baby needs apart from the breast milk, So definitely there will be a visible decline in the growth chart. So yes, the answer to this question is option A. Complementary food is not started after 6 months of age. So next question is, what do you think is happening in the image? Okay. That is actually an interesting answer.
Underweight.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, definitely you people have said the correct thing. This child is, the child seems to be wasted. Yeah. But definitely there is something else which, sometimes the eyes go to the focus, but there is something surrounding in the picture which is,
Weighing of the baby.
yes, the weighing of the baby. So, what is the usual method in which the baby is weighed? Either it can be a scale, which is yeah,
Salter scale.
yes, the Salter scale or the digital scale. So basically, this is just an improvised way where a tub is being used to measure the child, and this is a modification housing kind of a thing for the baby who is being weighed using a Salter scale. So this question has just been given to let you understand, let you people remember like what are the different ways in which the baby is being measured. So it can be either through a Salter scale, where the baby can be kept in a bag where the baby is when the baby is younger, or when the baby is not being able to sit properly, then that support also needs to be given, and also these kinds of modification can be done. Yeah, so the Salter scale and the digital scale. So Neelam Bajpai, I'll be coming back to your questions, okay? After discussing the problems, I'll come back to your question. Yeah, and you might also find some of your queries within the problems. So let us move to the next question. Please remember the Salter scale, okay? Okay, so number 16 is identify the WHO chart. What do you think is the correct answer? What about others? Right. So,
Voice,
yes,
Option B.
voice
Option
chart,
B.
wait for age.
right. So, in the previous charts, what we were seeing the percentiles. So, here, as you can see, that we have the blue color. So, the blue color is definitely for the boy, right? And then we have the weight for age, and here we have from birth to 2 years. So, it is a birth to 2 years growth chart for weight to age. And now, if you see on your right hand side, we have some values. Excuse me. So these values are the Z scores. So if you remember in the previous charts, we were looking through the percentiles. So these percentiles we were discussing as to how much percentage of children they lie below this level and how much they lie above the level. So we were talking in terms of percentiles. So this Z score is another metric where we are considering the standard deviation to a mean. So what do we mean by a mean? MEAN? Yeah. So the mean is basically the average of a population. So we have so many children and we take into account all of their weights, and then the average of that weight is the total number of the total weight of all the children divided by the total number of children. So that gives us the mean, and based on what is the standard deviation from the mean, these Z scores are calculated. And as you can see, we have the 0 and the 2, 3, -2 and -3 values. So the advantageous or the optimal values should always lie between this. So if these are the moderately malnourished children, the values of the children whose values lie in between these -2 to -3, they are the moderately malnourished children. And if it goes beyond -3, then it becomes a severely malnourished case. So please go through the normal distribution that has been discussed in your recordings, and also learn about these two metrics, that is the percentile and the z-scores, and how these are being utilized for measuring the proper growth and development of children, right? So here, as we can see, the answer is definitely it is a Boyce chart. So either it can be option A or option B. Number 2, we have from birth to 2 years. So as we can see, option B is from birth to 2 years, and it is definitely showing us Z scores, right? So hence our answer is option B, right? Okay. So next question, when is a sharp incline in the growth charts risky for babies?
Option B.
Option B.
Right. So if we go through the options, we are seeing if the baby is breastfeeding frequently. So that is what we want for the baby. So if the baby is feeding frequently, then it will be a gradual increase because the baby is doing it on a regular basis. If the baby is being fed animal milk or formula, suddenly along with the nutritional requirement which is being given by the breast milk or the other food which is being given to the baby, suddenly the animal milk or formula feed is also introduced into the diet of the baby. So that might increase or that might have a very sharp incline or a sharp increase in the pattern of the growth of the child. So this sharp increase, this is not desirable. It might be apparently showing that the baby is growing very fast, but definitely this is not advisable or this is not advantageous for the baby. As to the animal milk or the formula milk or the formula feed is not nutritionally advantageous for the baby. Option C, if the baby is being fed expressed breast milk, and option D, if the baby is breastfeeding for longer duration. So yes, the answer for this question is option B, that is if the baby is being fed animal milk or formula. Correct. Okay, so next question, how to check the accuracy of weighing scales? So somebody was asking this question, I guess. Yeah.
D.
Right. So how do you check the accuracy? Obviously, whenever we want to check something, we check it in association with a reference or a standard. That is what we have been doing all throughout, right? We are actually creating standards for our babies' growth measurements also. So the same concept applies here. So if we have to check the accuracy of a weighing scale, obviously we have to use a standard or a substance or an item whose weight is already known, and we just put it on the weighing scale, and that is how we can utilize, we can check it by the standard weight. So yes, the answer is option D. Okay, so who had asked? Yeah, Neelam Bajpai, is it okay? Is there any query related to this question? Okay, so we'll move on to our, yeah, thank you. So next question, what should be the total weight gain of a boy in the 5th week in grams? Yeah, I'm assuming most of you have already done the assignments. That is great. Okay, so somebody also says 200 grams. Okay, so let us C.
Option B.
Right, the answer is option B. Let us see why it is option B. So the question asks us, what should be the total weight gain of a boy in the 5th week in grams? So let us see, we have the weight chart in terms of percentiles. So total weight gain of a boy, the ideal would be a 50th percentile, right? So as we can see, the fifth week means in between the 4th week and the 5th week, right? So this is the 5th week. So here, if you see in 50th percentile, the child at 4th week had a weight of 4.4 kgs, right? So this is all the growth chart that we are just revising again. So this is a growth chart from birth to 13 weeks of the child, and here we are talking about the 4th week. So 4th week, you can see the weight was 4.4 kgs, and at 5th week you can see it is 4.7 kgs. So these are the references which has been established by WHO, right? So the question asks us, what is the total weight gain in the 5th week? So definitely the difference between 4.7 and 4.4, that is 0.3 kgs or 300 grams. So hence our answer is 300 grams, right? Okay. So please go through the different growth charts that are there, and you can expect to get different kinds of questions from the growth charts. And if you have understood how to interpret the growth chart, it is really easy to figure out the answers of your questions as well, right? So we'll move on to the next question. Which of these are nutritional assessment methods? Which of these are nutritional assessment methods? Yes?
Option C. Both of the above.
Right.
C is the correct answer.
Correct. So option C or both of the above, that means both biochemical, biophysical methods and clinical methods, these are nutritional assessment methods. So can anybody tell me what are the other ways by which we can also assess the nutritional status?
One is dietary method,
Right?
anthropometric methods.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Uh,
Yes. So we have been talking about these measurements, right? So anthropometric means human measurements. So whatever measurements or measurements that we are taking, right? So definitely all these come into consideration when we are taking the nutritional assessment. So yes, so very correctly said, the ABCDs of nutritional assessment. So the ABCDs, they stand for the anthropometry, that means the measurements of the different parameters, the different characteristics. Then we have the biochemical or the biophysical methods. So through different biochemical investigations or different biophysical methods, we can come to know about the structural composition of these nutritional factors. Then clinical methods. Clinically, we can see whether all these clinical manifestations, they can also give us an idea whether the child is deficient in something. Like all these wasting or stunting that we see, we are seeing the child, right? We are clinically seeing the child, and then we are deciding, okay, this is the deficiency. And how the different other clinical manifestations which are present in case of protein malnutrition or protein calorie malnutrition. So all these come under the clinical methods. And number 4, dietary methods. So whatever diet is being taken by the child, whether or not it is effective for that child or not, whether all the nutrients are being provided in that diet in specific ratios, as we have discussed before. So all the body building food like protein, and the calorific food like carbohydrates and fats, and all the vitamins and minerals, whether all of that is being entirely supplied to the child in proper quantities or not, right? So yes, the ABCD of nutritional assessment is anthropometry, biochemical and biophysical methods, clinical methods and dietary methods, right? So the answer to this question is both of the above. Okay, so we come to the end of our problem solving problems today. So does anybody have any questions? Any other queries? If you have, you can go ahead. Okay, so before ending the session, I would just like to, in case anybody is interested, I would just paste one link. Okay, so is the screen visible properly? The link that I have just shared?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the WHO website, and you can see that there is the multi-center growth reference study tab here, and there are the standards mentioned here, right? All the standards and all the parameters that we have talked about, it is mentioned here. So if we go, say for suppose somebody is asking what is the average weight of 6-month boy, right? So average weight of 6-month boy means weight for age. So that is the parameter. Let us go to weight for age parameter. So we can see, we have come to the weight for age parameter, and we can see that there are the Z scores, so we can see that there are the Z scores and the percentiles which have been given for both girls and boys, right? So here the question was average weight of 6-month boy. So 6th-month boy percentile, if we see, boys chart weight for age birth to 6 months percentile. So we can see that there is a PDF which directly takes us to the growth chart, right? So 6 months, if we see 6 months and average weight, so 50th percentile. So 50th percentile, it is around 7.8. So as you can see, it is less than 8. So what I wanted to just show you people is that if you are interested, you can go through all these parameters that are there, weight for age, length, height for age, and you can go through, and they have given the Z scores, all the percentile, and these growth charts, they are available in PDF form and also in Excel form, right? And there are simplified tables as well. So in case if somebody is interested, you can go to this you can go to this website of WHO, and you can always go through all these growth charts or whichever interests you, right? So yeah, so this is one thing that I wanted to share with you in case somebody doesn't know, or if somebody wants to know more about these growth charts. You can always go to the website and you can check out the different the growth charts available based on their different parameters. Okay, is there any standard free online or offline calculator to calculate the SAM and MAM in children? Yeah, there should be. I am not informed at the moment, but I think there are a lot of online calculators. And in case, I mean, in fact, if you go to the WHO website that I have just mentioned, they have also mentioned about softwares and the different softwares that can be used for calculation. So if you just can Google, I think you might find something which would help you calculate the SAM and the MAM also. Yeah, maybe I can just search and tell it to you the next day. Yeah. Okay. Why clean dry towel is kept on weighing machine? Okay, we have just, I mean, we have discussed this. So it is to prevent the infection, and also so that the body temperature is not reduced drastically. Okay, so that is the reason why clean dry towel is kept on weighing machine. Okay, so average weight of 6-month boy, please go through the growth chart. It will be now very easy for you to just figure out based on the 50th percentile. What were the other questions? How to check accuracy of weighing scale? Done. Okay, some other questions. Okay, average weight of 6-month-old boy and girl. Yes, as I've just told, please go through the growth charts, and their average weight means 50th percentile, right? So based on your age and based on the weight, you can figure out the based on the x-axis and the y-axis, you can easily figure out the weight of the 6 months old boy and girl. Please remember, every division in case of the weight axis, it is 200 gram, and the length axis, it is 1 centimeter. So you can calculate according to it, right? Okay, so I guess yeah, average weight of 1-year-old. Similarly, as I have shown you, the WHO website that I have shown you, it has got all these from birth to 2 years, from birth to 5 years, from birth to 13 weeks, and all these months, weeks based growth charts. So you can go through it, and you can you can just go through, and if you want to learn more about it, you can explore the website as well. So I guess all the questions have been answered. The curved colored lines on percentile growth chart show which percentile? Yeah, we have discussed this question, right? It is the 3rd percentile, the 15th percentile, the 50th, the 85th, and the 97th. So these are the percentiles which are there. So you will see that in your options. We have discussed this question also. It was just a modified question. So 3rd, 15th, 50th, 85th, and 97th. Is it fine? Okay. So anybody else has any other queries before the termination of today's session? Any other question anybody has? Yes, please go ahead. Yeah, somebody has raised her hand. Please go ahead. Satish Pol. Okay, I'm assuming. Okay. So if you have any other queries, you can always put it on the portal. And yeah, so for the next session, we'll be discussing content related to week 12. And of course, for the rest of the problem solving sessions, the penultimate problem solving sessions that I'll be having, I'll be discussing on the all over topics. So whatever we have discussed throughout all the topics that were there, so I'll be discussing problems based on those, and this will be definitely your exam specific. So what kind of questions you'll be having in your exams, and a thorough revision, I would prefer doing it in the last class. Okay, so that is for today. Yeah,
Thank you,
please.
ma'am. And is there any date has been finalized, madam, for a final examination?
Date.
Yeah.
I think you must have received an email today. Just give me a moment.
We have received an email, but still the dates have not come. Our
Yeah,
centers are not mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe you can just wait
And
for
hall
some time.
ticket,
Yeah.
hall ticket, when can we expect, madam, hall tickets?
Yeah, so as I've said, these are all, you just need to be a bit patient. These are all, looked after by the NPTEL team directly. So maybe just be a bit patient. If I get to know, I'll definitely let you know by the next week.
Ma'am, or is there any contact or mail where we can actually, ask them about these details, that call someone and get the details?
Yeah, you can, maybe you can put it on the, this ask a question tab, which is there in the
There I've put,
portal.
but I still not got any.
Okay, you haven't received any answer. I'm sure
Because I also have put it that I want in my place only the
Okay.
exam center. They are not mentioned. They are given us 3 options.
Okay,
So we can't go the other place to take a exam.
right, right. So maybe what you can do is,
No, because if the other option that we have given, no, if at all they are putting us for the other center, we'll have to book the tickets and go.
right. Maybe you can just
So for that
reply.
ticket should be available.
Yeah, maybe you can just reply to the email ID from which you have received the email, and I think actually these are the things that the NPTEL team it looks after directly. So I am also not informed regarding the hall ticket and the place of exam. So
No, actually, the exam date is April 30th for English and April 29th is for Hindi. That's what it seems today's message.
So you will be receiving all updated emails and everything. Yeah. So April 30th. Okay. Maybe you can just wait for another week. You'll be getting all the updated information. Yeah. Okay. Somebody had raised a hand. What is schedule of exam? Due to my work time, I'm not able to attend session. Okay. Satish Pol, you will be receiving emails. So be rest assured that you can get all the information there. Please upload today's PDF. Couldn't attend the first 5 questions. Okay. So yeah, the problem solving sheet that has been given to you people. So there is the folder link. So I'll upload the PPT today directly. And as for the YouTube recording, maybe you can just give me one day and I'll upload it by tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, Nishu Kumari, go ahead. You have raised a hand. You have any query? I am not able to hear you. Can you? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am, actually, I've filled my center as Delhi in the form, but actually, my husband has been transferred to Mumbai. So, is there a way to change the center now?
Okay, so all of these questions, I am really, I apologize, I won't be able to give you the answer. Please write to the NPTEL, email for this, and they are the only people who can help you out with these questions. And I
Okay,
can,
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
yeah, I can just help you out with the matter of the examination. Okay. So as for the hall tickets and everything, just wait for some time. I hope you'll be getting all the communication right away. Okay, so for today's problem solving session, this was all. We'll meet again the next Tuesday. Okay.
Thanks, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank
Okay.
you, ma'am.
Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.
Yeah. Good night. Thank you.